So a lot of people wonder what the difference is between conflict resolution and conflict management. And while you can explain the theories in different ways, I'll explain it this way. Conflict management is mostly focused on trying to reduce the negative outcomes and increase the positive outcomes that are the result of a conflict. Ultimately, the idea is to treat the experience like a learning opportunity. It's ideally focused on improving the performance of the team. It sounds good, but I'm going to be honest, I think it's the worst idea ever. And the reason for it is because it pales in comparison with what is possible to accomplish with conflict resolution. Conflict resolution, what I love about the theory is that it acknowledges that human beings have physical and emotional limits, and it allows for steps to be taken so that ultimately, if needed, the conflict can be brought to a complete close, or in other words, it can be resolved. If you're not sure what approach your organization takes, here's a simple filter question that helps to get that conversation started. Is it possible for someone to be fired? If the answer is yes and someone can be terminated, it's likely that you operate in a conflict resolution environment. If once you're in, it's very difficult to fire somebody, or people are only fired under the most extreme of circumstances, it's more likely that you operate in a conflict management environment. The reason that I get so excited about teaching conflict resolution skills as opposed to conflict management skills is because it makes clear that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It gives the people involved in the conflict hope. The reality is that when we're involved in a conflict, it creates a drain on our personal resources. We have to invest physical and emotional energy into navigating a conflict. And if we continue to be drained past a certain point, it actually negatively impacts our physical, mental, emotional well-being. And so if we're working with somebody going through a conflict and there's some drain on our resources, that is not a bad thing. In fact, we can come out stronger on the other side. Our relationships can come out stronger on the other side. But if we're engaged in a conflict with somebody who is not ready to navigate it, is not ready to work through the process, but instead is hunkered down, just sort of sitting there not doing anything about it, or is actually spinning the process in circles like a wheel spinning in mud, it's not going anywhere, well, then the ultimate impact on people, that continual drain on their physical and emotional resources, can result in all sorts of things, including but not limited to experiencing burnout, clinical depression, or clinical anxiety. You can have somebody who's now experiencing sleep disorders, somebody who is now experiencing digestive issues. It has a very real impact on the body and on our well-being. And so conflict resolution says, no, there is a cutoff point. This drain is not going to last forever. Because the conflict management theory can actually create an environment where part of reducing the negative outcomes of conflict actually includes staff having to take depression medication so that they can survive working in the workplace, I think it's fair to say that the conflict management theory has excellent intentions. It has an excellent heart, but in the end, it's a measure that's being used to hold the fort in a broken system. If your organization does not have the ability to terminate people who are causing a drain, a permanent ongoing drain on your internal resources, the best recommendation I can make is use your conflict management techniques to hold the fort. But at the same time that you're doing that, please invest whatever effort is necessary in order to make changes to your policies and actually make a termination possible. Having a conflict resolution approach to your environment actually impacts day-to-day functioning. It can impact the outcomes that your team is able to achieve on a day-to-day basis. I think a great example of that is to take a look at a professor. A professor who knows that they can lose their job is more likely to be an ongoing positive, constructive contribution to their workplace than one who has tenure and knows, hey, they can't touch me, I can't be fired. We don't necessarily mean to do it, but our environment is going to shape our attitudes to some degree. And so even somebody who's giving their best, they can lose their edge when their environment tells them, well, you know what, even if you weren't giving your best, even if you were just a bump on a log, you would still have a job here. In fact, having said that, if your organization is large enough and your environment is a conflict management environment, I can almost pretty much guarantee that somewhere there is a lump sitting behind their desk playing Candy Crush all day long. Reason for it, they know that ultimately nobody can do anything about it. And if that's the case, I can also pretty much guarantee that the people in your organization who are trying to give their best, they're being held back. In fact, you are paying money for somebody to do nothing. That's a drain on your organization's financial resources. It's a drain on your team's personal resources. You can also look at it this way. If you were to go to your doctor because you discovered that you had a lump, the doctors would take a look at, are there treatment options available? And if the answer is ultimately no, you schedule surgery and you remove the lump. In this video, I've primarily focused on the end outcomes of the theories, but I really want you to know that conflict resolution is not focused on how do I get rid of people. It's not ultimately focused on how do I remove people from the team. Instead, it's ultimately focused on how do I keep people on the team? How do I preserve these relationships, and how do I make sure that we can continue on under healthy conditions? So there's actually multiple steps that are taken first in an attempt to preserve the relationship. And if it's determined that that's not possible, then conflict resolution says, I respect myself, I respect my limits enough that if needed, I will create the distance that is needed in order for me to be healthy, up to and including terminating this work relationship. Trust me when I say that the people involved in a conflict will benefit greatly if they're taking a conflict resolution approach, even if it's difficult or uncomfortable at the time, and your organization is going to benefit big time as well in the long run. Now, having said that, I'm going to post a whole lot more conflict resolution videos. It's a topic I'm very passionate about, and so I'll post all sorts of information, including those initial steps that you can take at the beginning that ideally will resolve the conflict early on and prevent any major drainage of resources from even happening in the first place. So please be sure to subscribe to the channel. Don't miss a single video, and I'll be seeing you later.